There's a bright golden haze on the meadow. There's a bright golden haze on the meadow. The corn is as high as an elephant's eye, and it looks like it's climbing clear up to the sky. Oh, what a beautiful morning. Oh, what a beautiful day. I've got a beautiful feeling. Everything's going my way. Well, howdy. Hello to all my friends at JABA. Oh, I guess I can put this down now. Welcome to Kelly's Kitchen. And I thought I'd just start out with a little song to celebrate that on this day back in 1955, Oklahoma debuted. And that's one of my favorite shows, one of my favorite songs. So I just thought I would share it with you. Maybe I should call this Kelly's Karaoke Kitchen. Well, more on that later. So anyway, I am here today to share one of my favorite recipes with all of you. And hopefully there's plenty of staff, adult care center families and members, community center members, all of our JABA world watching right now, because I miss all of you. And if we can't be together in the same building, at least we can try to connect on Facebook or whatever else is out there that's available. And I do hope that you will check our Facebook page regularly, because I really am trying as hard as I can to post different activities that we can do together, or just things that you can read, or trivia, and just things to keep you entertained. So without further ado, I am going to share my favorite banana bread recipe, step by step. So here we go. Again, welcome to my kitchen. First of all, it's important that we, especially in today's day and age, wash our hands. So I'm going to step over here and do that first. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear everyone. Happy birthday to you. Okay, so my hands are clean. I'm just going to dry them off with some paper towels. Nice and dry, nice and clean. All right, and the next thing we have to do is we need to preheat the oven. And by the way, whether you cook or not, or bake or not, this is a really easy recipe. So I do hope that you'll try it. It's just dumping a bunch of ingredients into a bowl and making it just the way you want. So it just has to do with the way that you do it, which I'll show you. Anyway, I'm going to preheat the oven to 350. Okay, and while that's preheating, I'm going to take some of my Baker's Joy non-stick spray, and I'm going to spray it in my loaf pan. Now I'm using a glass loaf pan, but you can use a metal loaf pan. You can even make banana muffins. So you can use muffin tins and put the little cupcake papers inside the tins if you'd rather do that and you don't have to use the non-stick spray. Okay, so I'm going to give it a good spray all around. The worst thing that can happen is you try to take your bread out of the pan and it's all stuck and it breaks apart. So you want to make sure you coat it nicely, okay? And then I'm going to place it on a baking sheet like this. And I've covered it with some foil because sometimes the batter might bubble over a little bit while it's baking. And if that happens, you don't want it to stick to your baking sheet. That way it'll just go onto the foil and avoid some messes. So I'm going to put this over here while we get started. The most important ingredient is the banana. Voila! Now, you may look at these bananas and think, oh, gross. They're all brown and yucky. I mean, they're way past that ideal ripened stage. Well, that's exactly what you want. As a matter of fact, I like them even blacker because the more black they are, the sweeter they are. If you could just mush the bananas outside of the banana peel, it's even better that way. It makes the banana bread much sweeter and more moist. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. That's the first step. I'm going to take the bananas out of the peel. And I'll just throw the peels in my sink for now. And as you can see, yeah, that's pretty brown, isn't it? I mean, some people like eating this way. I prefer not to eat them this way, but when they're in a banana bread baked, it's much better. So I usually just break it up into small pieces like this and throw it in my big mixing bowl. All right, 1 banana. And by the way, you need 3 over-ripened bananas for this recipe. And off goes the peel. Okay. Banana number 3, trying to run away. Sorry, little guy. And I usually like to peel off like these little membranes too, because sometimes if you don't, you find them in your banana bread. So just kind of peel those off. All right, we're down to the last banana. Now I'm going to rinse my hands off again because they have mushy banana all over them. And again with the paper towels, nice and dry. All right, now I like to use, when I'm not using this as a microphone to sing, I like to use this to mash my bananas. It's a potato masher. Now you can use a fork. Some people prefer just to take the back of a fork and mash their bananas down, but I just find this is easier because it's bigger. So let me see if I can bring this down a little and you can watch me. Okay, so I'm mashing the bananas, mashing them up. And these are actually, oh, did you hear that beep? That means the oven is preheated. And so whenever we finish the batter, we'll be ready to put this in the oven. So these bananas are actually a little more firm than I prefer. I like when they're really easy to mash and they're darker because they've gotten really overripe. But we'll just keep mashing them. Mash, mash. Swirl it around, mash it up. Get all your frustrations out. Not that I have any frustrations. Being stuck in the house for the next couple of months. I don't know about you. But this is a great way to pass the time. And seriously, I do hope that you will all find some time to bake because it really is a fun thing to do when you have some extra time. Okay, so I'm going to put my little masher in the sink because that needs to be cleaned. And as you can see, I have mashed my bananas. That's about the way you want them to look, okay? All right, that is the first step. And if you've gotten that far, congratulations, because if you didn't have bananas, you wouldn't have banana bread. Okay, so what we need to do first is we need to mix up all of our wet ingredients. So the first wet ingredient is our banana, of course. And by the way, this is a recipe that I have been using for the past 20 years. I don't even know where I got it. But every time I make it, I seem to make it different. So I usually see what's in my pantry or what's in my refrigerator. And I just kind of get creative every time I do it. But this basic recipe will be fine for you. Okay, so another wet ingredient that I have is juice. okay? Now, this juice happens to be pineapple mango, but the recipe, the original recipe calls for orange juice. I don't always have orange juice in my refrigerator, so I just grab whatever juice I have. So we're gonna take a half cup of juice, okay? And you can use apple juice, you can use apple cider, you can use cranberry juice. I've even used grape juice, which kind of changed the color of the batter, but it still tasted good. All right, so I'm pouring the juice in with the mashed bananas. I'm gonna rinse out my measuring cup, and I'm gonna close up my juice, put it back in the fridge. Another wet ingredient is vanilla extract, which I love. Okay, so we're just gonna put a teaspoon of this. And because I have been doing this for so long, I just kind of guesstimate and I just pour it in. Let me bring this down again so you can see. I just kind of do a, but it's about a teaspoon of vanilla extract. And then we'll put this to the side. And the next wet ingredient are eggs. And I just happen to have 2 eggs left in this carton, which is exactly the amount that we need. So I usually crack open my eggs by gently tapping them together until one cracks. So that one is cracked open, and I gently use my thumbs to open it up over the dish and plop it in there. And then I can put the empty one back in the carton because we're throwing the carton away. Then we have one left. Just crack it gently on the side of the dish. Again, you can see a nice little crack there. And you want to be careful because you don't want these little eggshells to get in your batter. That's the worst, to bite into a piece of banana bread and crunch on a eggshell. Ugh. Okay, so I'm putting that in there and I'm throwing this in the trash. And I'm going to rinse my hands again because now they have raw eggs all over them. Remember, cleanliness is key in the kitchen. All right, another paper towel. I'm gonna dry my hands off. And as you can see, we have a few wet ingredients in there, still working on that. And the next wet ingredient that I like to add is from some of our local suppliers, and it could be from anybody, but it's apple butter. This happens to come from Childs. And this is just all full of cinnamon and apple goodness, and it really adds a nice flavor to the banana bread. This is not in the original recipe. This is just kind of something that I added one time, and it just sounded so good. So I just take like a big soup spoon, and I get 2 heaping spoonfuls of it. Put it right in there. Now, if you don't have apple butter, you can also use applesauce and cinnamon. It does the same thing. And it's also a healthier and more natural way of sweetening your banana bread instead of using so much sugar. Because this original recipe calls for 2 cups of sugar. So I do this, and then I put about a half cup of granulated sugar in, so there's not as much sugar in it. And plus, like I said, the bananas are sweet and the juice is sweet. So you're getting all kinds of sweetness in this. Okay, so now I do have my good old white Domino sugar. And I'm just gonna add some of this to my measuring cup. Hi, Lois. I'm so glad you're watching. And Tracy and Crystal. Oh, I'm so glad you guys are tuning in. All right. Oh, my goodness. It looks like I used more sugar than I realized. I'm almost out of white sugar. I I do make these breads a lot, by the way, because they freeze very well. As a matter of fact, I have one in the freezer right now. And they make really nice gifts if you're going to visit somebody, or I always bring one to my mother because she loves them. You can also just break them out for the kids. Like if you need something for breakfast or afternoon snack, my girls love them. I've been making them for years. Okay, so I got about a half a cup of sugar here, but you can do whatever you want. If you want it sweeter or less sweet, it's up to you. Okay, so I'm sprinkling the sugar in. Sugar, oh honey, honey, you are my candy girl. Told you, we're turning this into karaoke kitchen. Okay, so we've got all those nice wet ingredients in there. And I'm just gonna mix those up. Mixing up those wet ingredients. And I'm just doing this manually. I mean, you can use a hand mixer if you want, but it's just so easy. I just take the tool to the hand mixer and I just do it manually. So just stir it around and make sure those 2 eggs in there are getting evenly distributed in your liquid, okay? All right, and then the last wet ingredient is going to be, what will we find under my little piggy? It's not bacon, it's butter. Everything's better with butter. All right, so this recipe calls for 1/4 cup of softened butter. So it's important that before you start this recipe, maybe the day before, put your butter out on the countertop if you don't do that already, so that it's nice and soft, see? So I'm just gonna scrape this. This is that's about a 1/4 cup of butter right there, half a stick. Okay? Piggy's going back home. All right, and then again, I take my trusty little mixing tool and I'm gonna smash it down in that butter. And I'm just gonna mix it all around, mix it all around. And don't worry that you have some big chunks of butter in here. I mean, you don't want giant chunks, you know, you want little chunks to be spread around. It doesn't have to be like melted in the batter, because what happens is when it bakes, all of the butter bakes into the bread, and that's what makes it so delicious. So you got those little chunks evenly distributing all through the cake batter, or the bread batter. Okay, so I think that looks good enough, right? All right, so in this same bowl, we're now going to add our dry ingredients, okay? And the first one is, you guessed it, all-purpose flour. You can't have a bread without your all-purpose flour. We need 2 cups of flour. So I'm going to get my little measuring cup, blessed beyond measure. Isn't that cute? Okay. This measuring cup is 2 cups. So that's perfect. Okay, we have got 2 cups of all-purpose flour. You don't need to sift this. You don't need to pre-mix it with other dry ingredients if you've done that before in other recipes. That's why this is so easy. You just put everything in together. All right, so we're going to, I like to sprinkle in about 1 cup of the flour first. Let's see. Okay, and then set that aside. And then mix that in first, because the flour is going to make your batter so thick. And I think if you put it all in at once, it makes it more difficult to stir it all in. So I am getting most of the first cup distributed in there. And now I'm going to take the rest of it and just sprinkle it in. Hi, Anna. Thanks for joining in. Oh, you love the karaoke kitchen. I take requests. What would you like me to sing? All right, like I told you, this batter is getting thick. So this is where you're gonna have to use your arm muscle. Scrape the sides. Stir it all around. And you can see all of that chunky goodness in there with the butter and the bananas and the flour. Okay, so our first dry ingredient is done, okay? And I'm gonna set the flour aside. And next, we need baking powder. Baking powder. And this is going to take 2 teaspoons of baking powder. Now, I do measure this because I'm not as good at eyeing this as I am with the vanilla extract. All right, 2 teaspoons. And again, I like to mix this after every addition of the dry ingredients, just to make sure they get nice and mixed in there. And you know what, if you don't, you don't. It's not gonna really, you know, affect the outcome of the bread. But I think it just mixes better when you do it that way. Okay, and next we have pure baking soda. This is our next dry ingredient. And you need 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. And I always have this in my refrigerator, so I never have to worry about not having it. And I also use it for cleaning. I don't know if y'all do that, but it's a very good natural cleaning agent for your home. You mix it with a little bit of vinegar and scrub it up, dub. All right. Mix that baking soda in there. Okay. And then our final ingredient is salt. And you only need a little bit of it, but it is one of the most important ingredients in most baking. It really brings out the flavor, but you only need a tad. So this is my 1/4 teaspoon, which got stuck in the garbage disposal, but I don't think I can give it up. So anyway, it still works, it still measures. All right, so we got a 1/4 teaspoon of Morton salt. And, you know, I also have had sea salt on hand, and I put that into, so whatever you have on hand, just put that in. Okay, so now I'm gonna mix the salt in. Mix that around, get it nice and evenly distributed. Okay. And guess what? We are just about done, believe it or not. You see how easy that is? So now all you have to do is put it in the baking dish and put it in the oven. However, like I said earlier, you can tweak this any way you want. So at this point, you can add some other things to it if you want. The last time I made this, I put blueberries in it, and it was out of this world. As a matter of fact, my sister-in-law, who I made it for, just sent me a text an hour before this presentation. And she asked for me to send the recipe because it was so good. So yeah, you can add blueberries. You can add crushed walnuts. I usually do about 1 cup of crushed walnuts, which I love, but not everybody can have those because of allergies, so you have to be careful with that. You can also add chocolate chips, which is my girls' favorite. That's the first thing they always ask. Did you make it with chocolate chips? So, but it is really good. If you've never had the banana and chocolate combination, it's very good. So again, at this point, you could put those in your batter, but what I recommend is that instead of using this to stir those ingredients in, especially the blueberries, because the blueberries are so delicate. Let me just tap this off. I would use a spatula to mix in those other ingredients like that. And you can also use your spatula to scrape off the rest of the batter if you need to. I mean, there's not that much on here, but it helps just to get it all off there. And this helps when you're putting it into the baking dish. So I'm going to bring the baking dish over here. As you will recall, we sprayed this with non-stick cooking spray, and that will keep the bread from sticking. Because when my breads are finished, like I was telling you, I usually, I freeze a lot of them. Sometimes I make mini loaves, or sometimes I make the muffins, and I stick them in the freezer. So I want to make sure that they come out of the dish very easily. So it's very important to put that non-stick spray in. Even if you have a non-stick pan, sometimes I do the non-stick spray on the non-stick pans too, just to be doubly sure. Okay, so I'm gonna pick up my bowl and holding it with one hand. This is a little tricky. I've been doing this for a while. Sometimes you need help holding the bowl, but I hold with one hand, and then I use the spatula to gently scoop it into the dish. Okay. Scrape it all out of there nicely. And the spatula just cleans the bowl for you. You hardly have any cleaning to do once you get all the batter out of the bowl. Okay. There it goes. I like to try to get as much as I can. Don't want to waste any of that. Scrape it some more. All right. I'm going to put my bowl in the sink. And as you can see, the batter is now in the baking dish. This is divine. So what I'll do now is I'm going to place this on top of the baking sheet over here with the foil. It's a foil lined baking sheet because, again, depending on the size of the pan that you use, sometimes it might bubble over just a little. It shouldn't, but just to be on the safe side, I put the foil on because I like to avoid getting the mess all over the baking pan. All right, and as you will recall from the beginning of this video, I preheated the oven to 350 and it is ready for our bread, okay? So I'm gonna open the oven, and I have the oven rack set at the middle level because you don't want it to be too close, you don't want it to be too far away. So I'm gonna go ahead and place all of this in here. And now I'm going to set my timer for 50 minutes. Okay, and the reason why I don't start out with a full hour is because in the last 10 minutes, I like to take it out, and I usually take the foil that's below it, obviously using pot holders to move everything, and I put kind of like a tented foil on top of the bread where, you know, some air can get in the sides, but where it's not actually touching the bread. And the reason why I do that is because in the last 10 or 15 minutes of baking, it could possibly burn the top of the bread, and it might make it a little too hard. So putting the foil on top to tent it will avoid that happening. So again, when your timer goes off after 50 minutes, you're going to take it out of the oven, put the foil on top without touching the bread, and then you're going to put it back in the oven and set it for another 10 minutes, okay? And it may or may not be done. It depends on your oven. Ovens vary. Sometimes I have to put it back in for like 3 minutes or 5 more minutes. But the best way to determine that is if you take a little toothpick and you insert it in the center of the bread, as far down as you can, and then you pull it back out. And if there is batter stuck all over the toothpick, it's not done. It's still raw in the center. So I would just keep putting it back in like every 2 to 3 minutes, take it out, check it, take it out, check it. And then eventually you'll get in the groove, especially if you start making these over and over again like I do. You'll get to know exactly how long your bread needs to be in the oven. I'm going to put that back. And I don't have enough songs to entertain you for the next 50 minutes. So I think what I'll do is I will take a picture of the finished product and I'll post it on the Facebook page if that's okay with everybody. And you'll see what it looks like when it's finished. I know on the real cooking shows, they usually have one hidden in the cupboard that's already made, but sorry, I didn't have time to do that, and I didn't have enough bananas. So I can leave you with a song. I think I'll stick to the Oklahoma theme, maybe. How about chicks and ducks and geese better scurry when I take you out in a hurry, when I take you out in a hurry with the fringe on top. Okay, and how about this one? Believe it or not, I know you're gonna have a hard time believing this, but I actually played Ado Annie in Oklahoma when I was in college. I know, hard to believe. So this was the song that I had to sing. It ain't so much a question of not knowing what to do. I know what's right and wrong since I've been 10. I heard a lot of stories and I reckon they are true about how girls are put upon by men. Ooh, I know I mustn't fall into the pit, but when I'm with a filler, I forget. I'm just a girl who can't say no. I'm in a terrible fix. I always say, come on, let's go, just when I ought to say nix. When a person tries to kiss a girl, I know she ought to give his face a smack. But as soon as someone kisses me, I somehow sort of want to kiss him back. I'm just a fool when lights are low. I can't be fancy and quaint. I ain't the type that can faint. Oh, how can I be what I ain't? I can't say no. Do, 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 do. And when we say yo, ah, yep, ah, yo, ah, yay, you're only saying you're doing fine, Oklahoma, Oklahoma, O-K-L-A-H-O-M-A, Oklahoma. Thank you. Thank you for joining me. And I really enjoyed this. I hope you did too. If you want the recipe, I'll be happy to post it or send it to you. And again, I will take a photo of the finished product. And I really wish that you were all here to enjoy it with me. I miss all of you. I miss being with you. But this is next to the best thing. So anyway, hopefully we can do it again soon. Ciao, everybody.